Welcome to Groundwork, a podcast from McClanahan Corporation to talk about key material processing topics. Whether we're talking about raw material or giving valuable resources a new life, we'll break down the best methods, tools, and innovations in aggregate and mineral processing that keep the world running. Because if it's not grown, it's mined. So my name's Wesley Edevane. A little bit about myself. You guys may have seen me in a previous podcast, but I'll do a quick introduction. I am a regional sales manager that covers the washing and classifying line of equipment here at McClanahan. And I am joined by Daniel Miles from Process Machinery. Daniel, let you give a quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Daniel Miles. I'm president of Process Machinery Incorporated. We've been a McClanahan dealer for close to 20 years now, and we're located in the Midwest United States in Kentucky, and we cover Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi.
And of those 20 years, I think I've been working with you guys for the better part of a decade. So we have a lot of material to pull from. Essentially, what we're going to talk about today is troubleshooting tips for aggregate wash plants, and that means a lot of different things because there are a lot of different ways to tackle the applications that customers bring our way. So, in our experience, partnering with a dealer like Process Machinery, we're approached when you guys talk to a customer, whether it's a new customer, whether it's something that they have a need for a new product, or they have a problem with their current plant. You guys are approached to say, hey, can you come in, take a look at what we have? Is it going to work for the application that we're trying to do? And is there a way we can make it more efficient? Basically, I would say 9 times out of 10, you guys go out, talk to your customers. You know your customers' needs very well, and it always stems from some sort of problem that they're having or something that they need a solution for. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say most of the time we, short of a brand new greenfield site, but with an existing operation, you're generally always coming in and trying to figure out products not in spec, or how can we capture more sand, or what can we do to clean it up because it's too dirty, we're too wet, we got too many fines going to the pond. That's a big issue that's been in the last 5 to 10 years that people are getting more and more involved with. So going into there, just we generally a customer has an idea that they have a problem, and then it's our job to try to help them figure out what we can do to improve on their operation, and then obviously help them do cost analysis and figure out what is the payback, or can they pay it back by making the changes, and what is the best solution for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And usually when that conversation occurs, we'll be out on the road with your sales team in front of the customer, and usually, they'll have a piece of equipment, like you said, that's out there that's expected to do another job, or that just needs, some sort of troubleshooting that they currently have to try to meet the spec or the production goal that they've been tasked with. Because I know that, recently production rates are not slowing down. If anything, they're being asked to do a lot more with the same equipment. So I think that, the majority of our customer base and the guys that you deal with will have, what we call classic equipment. So screw washers, sand tanks, stuff like that. I know that there are certain ways to tune that equipment in to, either be more efficient or to deal with a dirtier feed. Something that comes to mind is that if a customer is approached and their flow rate has greatly increased, and they find that their screw washer is now being overrun with material, that's causing more material to flow to the pond. And what can they do about that, short of increasing the size of their screw washer or changing the speed? I know that testing is really important, and in fact, why I say that is, until you know for sure what you're losing or what's in the product, you don't know exactly how to fix your issue. So if we go to site and we take a sample of what's overflowing the weirs, and sure enough, there is a ton of material in there. Daniel, I know that you'll kind of take that information. We'll work together with our process engineering team, and then on your side with the customer, you'll kind of have to have an idea of what their final goal is. Can they put that back into their product, or is it something that they have to separate out to make that spec product? I know that there's certain times that luckily if they can put it in their product, that's money on the ground. If not, some other examples of what we've done is take that effluent feed stream that we've identified and kind of either do a scavenger system. I know you and I have implemented a couple of those. Any sort of examples down on your side that you've seen in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple examples. I would elaborate a little bit on what we do typically when a customer comes to us, because I think that one of the things that can happen is that customers don't always have the best tracking of where the tons are going. And so, we like to think that everybody's got a perfect handle on it, but that's just not the truth. So not only do we try to get samples of what is coming off of a screw on the overflow, but we typically try to look at what is the feed gradation going to the screen itself that's in front of it, typically because we really want to kind of do a double check of the mass balance to say, these are the products we're making, this is the gradation, so we can back into all those things and get the plant balance, the mass balance double checked, because you do get erratic samples. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Nobody likes to take a bath, and that typically happens when you get soaked out in the operation. So, but we'll kind of do a double check on it to make sure that the results match what should be going on with it. So once we do that, I mean, I think fines going to the pond is something that's really a big issue, and I would say that there is a lot of screws, washers in the industry that have been undersized. A lot of, unfortunately, not everybody looks at the total picture when they're selling a screw to a customer, and so sometimes they get machines that are capable of handling the tonnage, but they're not really capable of handling the raking of the water that needs to be scalped off. And so all of a sudden, instead of designing a screw washer to make a 150 split, as far as having the water capacity to do that, or the scalping capacity to do that, they're actually, ending up, with something maybe in the 70 mesh or 50 mesh. And so we're sending tons of sellable stone to the pond, and double dipping, meaning that we're taking sand that could be sold and sending it to waste, and then we're filling up the pond faster, so we have to clean those out sooner. Environmentally, that becomes an issue. The cost to do that is an issue. The safety doing that is an issue. It's just, there's a lot of issues when you don't properly size the equipment. So a lot of times it's, you just got the wrong size screw, unfortunately. And so adding like a scavenger system, which is a cyclone that comes in after the overflow off of the screw, we can capture that product, discharge it back into the discharge chute onto the screw, and put it back into the product. And this could be changing what's going to the pond by 5 or 10 tons, 15 tons. It could be an hour. I mean, these are not insignificant numbers when you talk about sand that's going to sell for $10 to $25 a ton. So it usually pays itself back very, very quickly on multiple levels. So a scavenger system is something that we've done quite a few times to repair the issue of having undersized screws in an operation compared to the water capacity.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said there are a lot of screws out there that either were undersized when they went in, or the customers just simply outgrown them. And I know that there's certain things that they can try to deal with the fact that it's undersized. You know, you can speed a screw up to a certain extent. You can try to raise the weirs in the back to try to maintain more fines in your product. But the bottom line is when you try to make sure that you're doing those changes, there are always unintended consequences. So let's say, you know, you're trying to get the capacity that you need out of your screw washer. So you're going to go from, you know, a nice 50% screw speed and jack that up to 100%. So unintended consequence there is, you know, although you are getting more material through that screw, which is great, you're putting more tons on the ground, what happens most of the time then is that product may come out being too wet. So when we say too wet, that means a lot of different things to different customers, because some customers like the idea of having a little bit of a moisture in their product for a number of reasons, but some customers don't have that luxury. They need to put it either loaded on a barge and get it out right away, or their customers are expecting to pick it up at a certain percent moisture, and if they don't have that, they'll get penalized.
I think there's a lot of issues with when your sand product is too wet. Not only do you most of the time, yes, I mean, you could be selling water per se, if it's going out on the truck, and so yes, there's an upside to that. But it's really hard to convey. So the soupier it gets, we have a lot of trouble with it staying on the conveyor belts and being able to be stockpiled. Ideally, we would like a sand stacker to be able to be inclined at least 15 degrees and be able to stack that sand up, accordingly. But if you can't get it dry enough, then you're all of a sudden you're having to run that conveyor at 13 degrees, and that affects stockpile volume. The pile sloughs off. There's just a lot of issues. It's messy in the operation. You got all this drain water going everywhere, and so you end up having ditches formed due to erosion, and it's just environmentally it's not as great. So most of the customers that we see now are wanting to move more towards, we want it dry, we want it to get it, we want to be able to sell it quick, because a lot of times it has to be below a certain moisture content to go out. And with the way operations working a lot of times now with hand to mouth with material, you are having to really put the driest product you got on the ground so that they can get it out as quickly as possible. And we have a lot of methods to do that. The first thing you got to do is make sure that the screw is operating the way that it's supposed to. Flushback water is one of the first things that I always go attack. Obviously, we want to check and make sure that the weirs are actually level and that everything is operating correctly back there. And so that we're getting the best ability to scalp off the sand and get it to settle properly and not waste it. And then flushback water, I mean, I can tell you multiple instances where when I go into an operation and they're like, well, it's just really wet. I'm like, well, is the flushback water on the screw? Well, no, why would I do that? That's just going to add more water to it. No, well, it doesn't do that. It cleans the trough out and allows the sand to dewater as it goes up, up the auger flight. So it's an important piece of it. And then they'll argue with me about it. And I'm like, well, how about we just try it? And then you turn it on and then everybody just gets real quiet and walks away and nobody admits anything. But the reality is that it does make a difference. It's not going to take a 30% sand and then make, that's got 30% moisture in it, make it 15, but it might make it 25 or something, or 27, and that matters. I mean, every percentage that you get is less time than it has to sit and dewater before you can put the product in a truck. The next step would be to try to put it into onto a dewatering screen following. So we did a whole project for a customer where they were shipping the sand product on a river, and being able to run the sand across a dewatering screen literally paid for the entire project, because they were sending 10% drier product up the river and putting that onto a barge. As it was transported up the river, it was sitting there dewatering, and when they started out with a 1,000 or a 1,500 ton barge, all of a sudden it was 1,300 tons, at the other end. And so that cost to move the sand was, valuable to them to be able to recover more of the product cost, based off of what the cost to transport was. So just, we added dewatering screens, and that literally justified the entire project. Again, it doesn't move the needle to the point to where it's like 0% moisture, but you go from a 25 to 30% moisture content down to 15 or 20, pretty readily, and that's a big difference. So that is a very, very popular thing for customers to do. The cheapest machine is generally not always the right answer. Is something to think about. And then, not to get too far into talking about processing side, but that has been in the aggregate industry. We're seeing a lot more interest in going with ultra sand plants and so forth now, because they do tend to produce a drier product than what we get out of the screws, and we also get a better capture rate of the sand because we can dial them in to be more exact. And so while the cost may be a little higher on that ultra sand plant, it's worth it on the dryness of the product and a few extra tons per hour put to the ground.
Yeah, and really good point, because we've touched on, what we call it the scavenger system, and then an ultra sand plant, and what that breaks down into is that's using, cyclone based technology to try to capture the material in a slightly different way. So, it'll do the same job per se. It'll still classify, and wash material to a spec sand point, but it does it slightly differently. So, a screw washer, I would say that if you're in this industry, you've seen a screw washer. Not everyone has had the experience with cyclones, separators. So just quickly, I'll kind of touch on, what we mean by the ultra sand plant, and you brought up a really good point. It can be more efficient. It does come with its own set of challenges, because there are different ways that you'll need to tune and troubleshoot a separator or a cyclone. So they work based on the principle of you're pumping a slurry to a cyclone at a certain pressure, at a certain percent solids, and then you're making a cut in that cyclone, and you're hopeful to get a spec sand coming out of the underflow. So a lot of times, we try to model this and say a customer has, a large 36-inch separator or cyclone, and they're trying to make a tighter cut, so they're trying to get more fines in their product. And there's certain ways we can approach that to change the pressure that it's being pumped to, and trying to affect the cut point there. Another thing that we can do is look at physically changing the body size of that cyclone or separator, because if we implement one of these ultra sand plants or a sand plant with a cyclone or separator, sometimes you're limited in the ability to tune that separator or cyclone based on the physical size of that unit. So that's why you see ultra sand plants with one or two large cyclones or separators doing one job to make a spec sand, whereas you would see what we call an ultrafines recovery unit that looks very similar, uses the same type of equipment. The only difference is you'll find multiple smaller diameter body cyclones, because it's trying to capture finer material. And like you said, it can take that material that's either overflowing as part of what's going to your pond, like we talked about earlier, and taking that second step to going to a ultrafines recovery system, like is going to have smaller diameter cyclones discharging onto a dewatering screen. And really, it's really versatile equipment once you get to the ability to have somebody like Daniel and his team go in and take a look at what that current scenario is that they're running into, and all the different changes that we can make on the backside to either add equipment or tune the equipment in a more efficient way. And I know a lot of times now, especially if you are approaching a greenfield site, you might look at that and say, okay, let's model in an ultrafines recovery unit. Would you say that you're seeing that more and more recently?
Absolutely. For a lot of years, our go-to was to go with the classic equipment. It was simple to operate. It was well known, and and in today's world, I mean, I think the ultra sand plants and ultra fines recovery or just cyclone and separator operation. People are a lot more comfortable with it. It's becoming more and more prevalent, and then we really want to give the customer the option. So we go in and we'll model with the classic equipment and we'll price it out accordingly, and then we'll do the same thing with the ultra sand plant and ultra fines recovery and a lot of times, be honestly, I mean, I go into a project and I think they're not going to go for the ultra sand plant. They're not going to go for the ultra fines recovery. It's going to be too much money, and they're not going to be able to justify it. And then you come back and you look at the numbers, and they're not that far apart. And then they're capturing more product, and they're saying, yeah, this is definitely worth it for us to invest in this because I've got these pond issues, and I can sell every bit of this product that I can get. And sometimes we'll reconfigure the screens and the chutes and things like that to where we can dial in the products on the ultra sand plant, make a really nice C33 sand, manufactured sand coming off of them. All those things matter, and we just see customers thinking differently as we present them this is what you could do if you want to go this route. And they, ideally every customer wants to, every piece of stone that they blast out of the ground or sand and gravel that they dredge or whatever it is, they're wanting every bit of that to be utilized because they have to put inputs into it to get it out of the ground. And if they can minimize the waste to almost nothing, that helps them be more and more profitable in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that like you said, if they are extracting it, they need to find a home for it, because if they find a home for it, that's more on their bottom line to justify the next project or to realize the return on investment of the project that they just completed. And I think that when we look at the different types of equipment, and when we present a solution or we try to troubleshoot what they're running into now, a lot of times we'll come back to keeping this equipment maintained is really important in a way to prevent downtime. And whether it's a screw washer, cyclone separator, dewatering screen, they all come with a certain set of challenges when it comes to making sure that they're operating as efficiently as they can. And even just cyclones in general, you'll see they'll start to wear at the apex, and the cut point's going to be affected, or you're going to get a product that's too wet, that's out of spec, that has too many fines. And what we try to do is work with our dealers like Process Machinery and say, what does a preventative maintenance plan look like? What does that look like to try to make sure that this is being maintained, and why is that important to the customer? Would you agree that would be kind of what we approach when we have that equipment conversation?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, unfortunately, in today's world, operations don't have as many maintenance people with boots on the ground to be able to look at the equipment, and so they need us as a dealer to try to come in and help, do preventative maintenance programs to help, keep the equipment operating most efficiently. And fortunately, what happens is a lot of times, you have customers that call and they'll say, my sand product's out of gradation. I don't know what's going on, you got to get over here and help me and figure out what the deal is. And unfortunately we go, and it's a lot of times pretty simple. It's an apex that's worn out, or all of a sudden they got a hole in the side of the cyclone, or some wear issue, or a panel's out of the screen that's wore out, and they just didn't take the time to really get up there and look at it. And so putting yourself on a regular preventative maintenance program, saying every quarter or whatever, depending on the wear characteristics. I mean, it may be once a year, it could be once every week. It just depends on what the operation looks like and what their product is. But it allows the to be able to get in there and just be ahead of the game so that you don't have these problems come up after the fact. So getting the equipment maintained and keeping it maintained, whether it's classic or processing equipment or anything else, anything in the plant, crushers. I mean, all those things make a big difference with keeping the plant operating efficiently and minimizing downtime.
Yeah, and I think most of the time is a customer will kind of, given a season or two of running, they'll get a really good handle on how their material is going to wear, whether it's white iron screw washer shoes, whether it's rubber components in a pump or a cyclone or separator. They'll really start to get a feel for, okay, every 6 to 8 months we need to be looking at replacing this or this. So yeah, I think having that sort of maintenance schedule and partnering with somebody like Process Machinery to help them develop that through the help of our equipment engineers is huge for them to prevent downtime, because every minute that equipment isn't running is a minute that they're losing money. I know there a lot of times we've been asked to kind of say, okay, what is this going to cost me throughout the course of what's the cost of ownership throughout the course of 10-year period. What's really hard to put into a number is what's the cost of not maintaining it, because that number is often way larger than what the parts themselves would cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, downtime's just huge, and then having a pile of out of spec product is terrible. So what are you going to do with this now if I can't sell it? So the maintenance issue is huge. We're talking about processing equipment, but really, I mean, it's screws too. Classifiers. They're all the same issues. Coarse material washers. You should inspect your screw shafts. There's simple tools out there that you can measure the thickness of the tubes on your screw shafts. The number of calls that we'll get randomly of saying, oh my gosh, I broke a screw shaft. I've got to replace this thing. What does it take to get a screw shaft? And we support those things, but that's significant downtime that could have been prevented. Just being able to do that on a planned schedule is huge. Keeping the hydraulics valves working on a classifier is a big deal. Operating properly, changing the plungers and the liners, on those systems, and all of the downspouts. I mean, all this stuff, it makes a difference in what you're doing to keep the plant operating, and you just need to stay on top of it and recognize that you're going to see patterns. I mean, after the first couple of years of operation, you're going to say, well, this is the first time I've had to replace this wear part, or I still haven't had to replace this wear part. Should I replace this wear part? So just trying to be proactive about those things is going to make a big difference for your operation.
Yeah, and the bottom line, I think, is we want to make sure that customer is able to put spec product on the ground and minimize the amount of downtime they do have, because every plant's going to have downtime. It's whether it's, you just hope that it's planned downtime and not unplanned. But yeah, again, I mean, kind of just to summarize what we've been talking about this entire time is how to make sure that their equipment is running efficiently in a way to put their spec product on the ground in the amount of moisture that they need, at any given time. So, whether it's adding new equipment, dewatering screen, or cyclones and separators to help scavenge the material, really what we want to make sure that we kind of drive home is, with the help of Process Machinery and our dealer network, the equipment that we manufacture is only as good as the application that is put into, and we rely very heavily on the expertise of people, like yourself and your team, to kind of help a customer through what they're dealing with, and really get to the point where they feel confident in the equipment that they have running in the most efficient way that it can. I think just to wrap up here, I think what it points to is the more information that you can gather, the more that you're able to help your customer in a way that there's always a way to troubleshoot what you have. There's always other equipment that we can recommend. No process itself is too difficult if you have the ability to run that equipment in an efficient way and then also maintain that equipment. Thanks to Daniel and the Process Machinery team for jumping on here and setting this up. I'm sure that you'll probably be asked to do this again. You did a fantastic job. So
Thank you, Wes.
yeah, and thank you for listening to Groundwork, a McClanahan podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite listening app for new episodes and follow McClanahan on social media for more content. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wes Edevane, Regional Sales Manager, McClanahan. If you like this episode of Groundwork, make sure to check out these other videos, like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to never miss an episode. Thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Wes Edevane, Regional Sales Manager, McClanahan. If you like this episode of Groundwork, make sure to check out these other videos, like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to never miss an episode. Thanks for watching.